Good evening. Firecrackers caused a house fire in Dunedin last night. One room of a flat in Cumberland Street was gutted and a student lost many of his possessions. Mark Price took a look at the damage this morning.
5 years of memories of university days in Dunedin went up in smoke, and in amongst the charcoal are the remains of notes of little use now to their owner, who has one exam yet to sit.
Just mainly family photos. Well, about half my clothes, half of them at the laundry. So it's a bit of luck, but yeah, all my notes, all my books.
The fire also reached the outside of the vacant flat over the fence. All this damage the result of letting off a few firecrackers.
There's a proliferation of them around the city this particular time, and we believe that a member of the group threw a bunch of crackers into the particular room, onto a bedding, and then they left the premises to go and take some liquid refreshment. A friend of the people occupying the flat discovered the fire, closed the door and called the fire brigade.
And Mr Grenier took the opportunity to remind the victim about the need to be careful with fireworks.
In hindsight, definitely irresponsible.
Yes. And you have been throwing crackers around inside?
Yeah, well, for years. I don't know. No, I'm at a loss, literally.
Yeah. The fire was the first serious incident of the fireworks season, but already from the student area there are reports of Guy Fawkes mischief.
It has come to our notice that groups of students have been having the odd skyrocket fights, firing rockets from one side of the road to the other. It's only been brought to our attention. There was no action on the brigade.
And the fire service has given approval for 41 bonfires over the weekend. That's twice as many as last year. On the industrial front, there's been a development in the dairy workers' dispute at the Stirling factory near Balclutha. The union met there this afternoon and decided to lift the threat of industrial action, calling at the same time for a return to award negotiations. At the Port Chalmers container terminal, there's been no work again today. Harbour workers were meeting this afternoon and further talks with management are planned for the morning. 2 ships are held up by the dispute. Dunedin police have drawn a blanket following up possible sightings of the missing Auckland doctor Peter Coop. Dr. Coop went missing several months ago, and police have now investigated 13 calls received after the Crime Watch programme featured Dr. Coop. The police say nothing substantial has resulted from their inquiries, and they won't take any more action unless further information comes to hand. Holidaymakers can rest undisturbed beside the Arrow River this summer. The popular picnic spot was in the news a year ago when locals banded together with the local authority and the Department of Conservation to oppose a gold mining licence covering 8 hectares upriver from the Arrow Bridge. The application for the prospecting licence has now been withdrawn. The chimes on Invercargill's restored post office clock, which have been ringing out across the city since June, haven't met with universal acceptance. In fact, opposition has been so loud the chimes are to be silenced at night. John McDermott reports.
The clockwork-driven bells ringing out from Invercargill's stylish new Wapna place have been part of the recipe that's recently got locals feeling so good about their city. But not everyone's happy. David McKillop's real estate business sits right below the clock tower.
We find the bells very noisy, especially on a warm day when we've got the windows and doors open. In fact, when they ring at times on the hour, especially if we're on the telephone, we cannot hear, so it disrupts the business during the course of their ringing.
But it's at night that the bells lose their appeal for a lot more people, especially guests at the nearby Railway Hotel.
Well, it's something we can well do without. We don't need that noise at night. Any noise at night, particularly from people who are away from their home environment, are very conscious of noise, and the bells chiming on the hour and on the quarter and half, 3/4, it gets a bit tiring after a while.
Right since their recommissioning in June, the council's been under pressure to follow Dunedin's town hall clock example and turn the chimes off at night. Not everyone, though, agrees that's necessary.
No, they're all right. They're not too loud or anything. I think it'd be a shame if they got turned off. I think generally for the city it's a good thing. And for the few people that are inconvenienced, I think a lot more people get enjoyment out of them.
But the pressure has told, and now work's underway at the city engineering workshops on an electric winch that will silence the bells at night. The $3,000 adjustment to the clock should take effect in 2 or 3 weeks, and initially will probably be used to stop the chimes between 11 p.m. and 6 in the morning.
275 drought-stricken farmers from North Otago and South Canterbury have applied for New Start grants. Federated Farmers is surprised at the low number of applicants, but expects more to apply before tomorrow's deadline. A West German conscientious objector has taken up residence on an island in Otago Harbour to escape military service at home. West Germans must spend 2 years in the military unless they can find an acceptable alternative. In this case, the first involving New Zealand, the alternative is working and living on St Martin's Island. Mark Price reports.
23-year-old cabinet maker Jan Besch went to his new island home, having won his battle with the West German military. He's been fighting, in a peaceful way of course, to avoid compulsory military training. The 20% of young West Germans who are conscientious objectors must find an alternative which is in some way useful.
Maybe it's like a dream to me.
Jan Besch's alternative is 2 years on St Martin's Island, once a quarantine station for immigrants. Last century, thousands passed through, some got no further, dying of smallpox, measles and scarlet fever. The island's now a retreat for religious and peace groups, and here there's a place for a young man handy with a hammer and committed to peace.
It isn't easy for conscience, at least for my conscience, to understand that you're trained to kill other people. And I ask myself, why could people go to the army?
2 years it's taken to get through the red tape, the Methodist Church looking after the West German end, the St Martin's Island community, the New Zealand end.
Sometimes I must admit I ask myself, you know, with all the negotiations, is it worth it all? But now he's here, it sure is.
Jan Besch is the first. It's likely he won't be the last to seek sanctuary in this way from the military back home.
And that's our programme for tonight, but before we go, it seems that sometimes when you ask people questions, you receive a different answer from what you expect, which was what happened to Dunedin City's special guest, Paul Holmes, yesterday.
We say to you, next to Hillary. We love Hillary and we like you too.
No, and it's not my mother, but I can say you're definitely on my Christmas card list. We'll be back tomorrow night. Good night.